welcome you all to the library dedication this afternoon. Let's give another round of applause to Jim Peckle and his middle school band. I'm Sherry Stubbe, and I want to welcome you each today. One person that I want to welcome that's not, his name is not on the program, is Andrew Dahlgren. And if you just stand, he's from Madison, and he's the consultant for the library where he administers the grant. So let's just give him a welcome. To begin our program today, I'd like to introduce Sue Galasny, who's going to come and do some vocal selections for us. Please rise for the national anthem. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets swept their columns bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, save us that star-spangled banner yet wave, o'er the land our noble free, grand the old of reign. I'd like you all to join me singing America the Beautiful. Oh, beautiful, for spacious skies, forever waves of grain, for purple mountains, majesty, above the fruited plain. America, America, God shed His grace on thee, and from thy good with brotherhood, from sea to shining sea. Thank you. Now Barbara Beecham's going to come and give the presentation. If you watch me get around or come into this building, you know that this is a nice way to be pushed around. Several years ago, there was a song that became quite popular, Don't Get Around Much Anymore. And that's for me. That's going to be my theme song for a while. Anyway, this is the first time that I've seen the interior of this lovely building. I think it's wonderful. We have a wonderful librarian, and in the lab she's got good working space and good equipment. Books and libraries have long time been my friends. I think it dates back to the time that I first learned to read. And in that little school, about 6 miles out of town, a rural school, we had a library that was about the size of your clothes closet. And I read everything in that library. The only thing I didn't finish was the encyclopedias and Webster's unabridged dictionary. I'll have to go back someday. I could go on for a long time and tell about my love for books and libraries and how it has grown with the years, but our time is limited today, and I want to tell you about, I have another story that I have to tell. I'm here for another mission. For the past year and a half, Mr. E.J. Foster, known to you as Red, and I were custodians for a fund, a memorial to a former teacher, Mr. E.R. Barden, known as Dick Barden. Red is one of Dick's special friends, and I was his student, Mr. Barden's student in general science when I was a freshman. Because many of you never knew Dick Barden, I would like to tell you a little about him and how the Memorial Fund came to be. Some people say about Dick Barden that you have to look up to him. You did. He was over 6 feet tall, but he was tall in many other ways. Dick came here in 1923, a long time ago, graduated Platteville State Normal School. He taught 3 subjects here in the Phillips High School, our old building. He taught agriculture, animal husbandry, and general science. In addition, he was a football coach. And at that time, just listen to this, football was the only available sport for boys. How things have changed. And for all this work and devotion, he got $100 a month. How would you like to work for that today? But those were pre-Depression years, and probably that wasn't such a bad salary at that time. In 1927, Mr. J. Vanetta, principal of the high school at that time, moved to Sturgeon Bay. Realizing the worth of Dick Barden as a teacher, he spirited him away from us to teach in Sturgeon Bay. In 1936, after Dick's father's death, Dick took over his father's farm of 236 acres in Platteville, Wisconsin. As the years went by, the work became too heavy for Dick, so he hired a couple, Mary and Neil Schuler, to take over for him. Dick was married twice, losing both wives to cancer. One of them, their marriage lasted only 11 months. He had no family and adopted the Schulers, and they adopted him, and he spent a lot of his time with them on the farm. Due to his many activities on the farm, he may well have been a union man, but I do know for sure he was a reunion man, coming back to Phillips for almost every class reunion, including my own class of 29. He loved coming back to Phillips and to visit with all of his old friends. Because he was so faithful in this respect, our class decided to honor him as well as another teacher who always came with him, a former Phillips resident, Irene Rasmussen Clausen. Our class had a special theme for most of our reunions, and for this we chose a royal affair. We made gold crowns for each of these faithful teachers, but we needed someone to place them on their heads. Now, every class, I'm sure, has a funster, one who likes to make his classmates laugh when they shouldn't be laughing. Such a person was Eugene Braun, now living in Marshfield with his wife, Mary. I don't know if they were here, if they're here today, but they were going to try to be here. If so, I have to be careful what I say. Anyway, we asked him to bring in not the clowns, but the crowns, which he did on a silver platter, placed them on the heads of the couple, and declared them king and queen of all reunions. They were delighted and wore them proudly. Now, if my niece will bring forth a picture, I have a picture to show you the two of them with their gold crowns, and I know some of you won't be able to see it. Maybe you can hold it up so they can see it, Janet. And you can come up afterwards and look at it in case you've never seen Dick Barden and Irene Rasmussen Clausen. They were delighted and wore them proudly. Another circumstance which fit right in with our theme was that we had a class president by the name of Earl Hamill. So we placed on his shoulders a royal cloak and dubbed him the Earl of Hamill. This was a highlight of Dick's life. 5 years later, our 60th, I hate to say this in public, I can't believe so many years have gone by. We invited this royal couple, but about 3 weeks before the reunion date, Dick called me and we visited for 1 hour in which he asked about all his old friends, what they were doing, how they were, the students, what was going on in Phillips, how delighted he would be if he could see the progress, this library and all the economic progress that has gone on in Phillips since he was here. Toward the end of our conversation, he almost broke down and he said, "Barb, I can't make it this year. My eyes are getting very bad. I would be a hazard on the highway. So the king and queen won't be there this year." We missed them terribly. Things weren't the same without these two loyal teachers. Then only a short time later, Irene called to say that Dick had passed away after only a 3-week bout with cancer. After Dick's obituary was printed in the Bee, people started sending money to Flatville for a memorial to Dick. Mary Schuler called me saying Dick's heart was always in Phillips. So I'm sending this money, including my own donation, back to your attention for a memorial there. That is how the memorial fund started. And I will give you the rest of the story by presenting the nation's flag to the Friends of the Library from the Friends of Dick Barton, all-around good citizen, exemplary teacher, and loyal friend to many. Irene, Janet, will you bring the flag? Oh, it's Mrs. Dewey right beside you. I'm going to present this to you. Okay. Our flag is silent, and yet it speaks to each of us. This is the words of Woodrow Wilson, a former president of the United States. It speaks of the men and women gone before us, and it speaks of their record written upon it. And the latter part of that remark, obviously, is just a figure of speech. We do not write on our American flag. But you can draw your own conclusions as to what he is trying to say. But having known Dick Barton, I am happy to present this in his memory. Our flag was created as a nation. It was created for a nation under God. And I therefore feel compelled to say, God bless America from sea to shining sea. And now, if you will bear with me a moment longer, there is an addendum to this memorial. There was money left over after the purchase of the flag. So now I am proud to present, here I need my niece again to bring me a check. I'm proud to present from the Friends of Dick Barton a check in the amount of $219 and some cents to be used not toward the building fund this time, but toward some item on their wish list, which I understand they have posted somewhere, either as an accessory or a necessity for the interior of the building. Before I relinquish the floor, I would like to publicly thank Fred Foster, who is sitting behind me somewhere, for all his help in carrying out the wishes of the Friends of Dick Barton. And to this good audience, I say thank you. And that's the rest of the story.
I invite all of you to join me in a spirit of prayer. God of all creation, throughout our recorded history, your gifts of curiosity and imagination have cultivated great collections of understanding, wisdom, and creativity. As we gather here today, we celebrate and give thanks for the long hours of many, many people who dreamed of this place, of this day, when these doors of this beautiful new building would open unto this collection of books and materials. And so we pray that the curious young minds who enter here be sparked with the wondrous possibilities of reading, that those of youthful energy be guided and challenged to a growing understanding of the world in which they will soon assume leadership. And for the souls whose lifelong hunger to learn and grow calls them here, let them be filled with your wisdom and grace. God of all people, on this early spring day, we most earnestly pray that this library may be a place which always plants and nurtures the seeds of knowledge, understanding, compassion, and peace for all people, and that this sanctuary of knowledge and imagination would be a catalyst for a better and brighter future for everyone of this community. We pray your blessing rest and remain with all who enter. Amen.
To officially dedicate our building this afternoon, I'd like to call Eileen Zielinski, our head librarian, and Carol Windorf, she's our grant administrator, and Devin Mott couldn't be here this afternoon, he sent his regret, but we have Ken Staub here from B&K Builders, and Mr. Mayor, Jim Fishko.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm glad to see such a good crowd here. We sure couldn't have got this crowd in the old library. While I was sitting here, I didn't really write something because I wasn't going to take up a lot of time. This ain't my day. This is your day because it's an accomplishment by the community and by various people here in the community to get this established. I was looking at this counter here and thinking to myself, gee, if we put that in the old library, we only had a half a library. Now that's about how much room we had. The people here had never been in that library. At this time, I would like to thank the library board for their great lengthy work in convincing the city and the city council to go along with it. I also want to thank two people who I thought were part of the construction crew every time I come here. And one was Carol Windorf, and the other one was Jenny LeChamp, who represented the city's interests. And at this time, I want to thank them and anybody else who I didn't know was involved with this. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. At this time, I have the pleasure of introducing Herbert J. Grover, the Superintendent of Public Instruction for Wisconsin.
Thank you, Sherry. Thanks all of you for allowing me the privilege to come back to your fine community for a second time to celebrate in your progress and in your accomplishment. I had the privilege of being here recently to dedicate a school building. I don't know if they're going to invite me for the swimming pool, but I can come back a third time to see it. Knowing as you look at all the things, I'm glad you recognize Andrew Stahlgren from the Fire Department of Construction who managed the grant. And he was up here and he did all the work, and then I get up and do the preaching. And I just wanted to make sure that you knew that we're very fortunate to have him in the Department of Public Instruction. Carolyn, Jenny, Chance, and LaChance, and Sherry, and I see Ted and Helen are recognized, and you have Eileen Zielinski and Mark Book, and the whole sense of variant factions in the community working on this project. Can't wait for the reception to see the Boy Scouts of this community. Oh, it seems like it's as American as apple pie. Richard Wakenhorn out here, my friend. In that sense, little groups of dedicated citizens in heartfelt communities, like this fine community that you're privileged to live and to reside in, why you make a substantial difference in the quality of life for all of the citizens. And I mean, what could I say today that would reinforce that a little bit? And I found a quote from Margaret Mead, an anthropologist. She said, "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has." And so then, groups of elected officials, your mayor and your board of trustees, and yes, your library community and your media, and the citizens of this community said the quality of life in this area is determined upon our pursuit of opportunity around what is good for all of the citizens, not just the selective access to opportunity for the individual. And so I found some other words. I was a little afraid to use them, but they catch my fancy. Maybe it speaks to how we make progress in our society, and it's incremental. We stumble along as a people trying to leave the campsite in just a little better condition than we found it. So someone said, when someone criticized his administration for stumbling along, Abraham Lincoln replied, "It may be true, but please God, I think we're stumbling in the right direction." And you're stumbling in the right direction in this community by the collection of your resources and the dedication of this learning center for all of the citizens. You see, for me, the library is an educational institution. We're in our society now talking about lifelong learning, and particularly in areas of the state where we are somewhat geographically isolated, it is the cultural center of the community. And with modern technology, you can access to all of the art and music, to all of the literature, all of the video, all of the display that is anywhere else and in the state and in the nation. And in that sense, it's a special resource for your community. And then what did Harry Truman say? Harry Truman said that the library is the common man's university. And I enjoyed the original presentation here as you read every book. And Harry read every book in his community library. I think there were 3,000, he said. And he went right through every book that he could get his hands on. And so then it enhances the quality of life. And it reinforces the social contract as we think about each other. And not so much, I gotta be me, and the self-interest of the self as opposed to the commonwealth of the community. So that's what you're celebrating here today. You're celebrating also the transfer of the accumulated knowledge of the humankind from one generation to the next. It's all here in the public library, accessed with modern technology. So then the children are here, and we hope that the children will come and use this library, but we hope all of the citizens in this community will find enrichment and find inspiration and find a presence and find access and find knowledge and find information by using this commonly held institution in this fine and progressive community. So then, for the little kids, I think of the words of Louis L'Amour. He said, "Once one discovers how much fun it is to read, life is never dull. The interest grows with each book. Places you have never seen are known to you and are real. And you can walk in times far away from yours. And when you wish, you can speak to the great minds of all ages." And when I was a kid growing up in Shawano, I grew up next to the county library. I used to shovel her walk, used to mow her lawn. And name was Ella Westphal. She was an Ethel Barrymore type of woman. And she used to go in front of the county board and absolutely intimidate all those poor old retired farmers. She had everything she wanted for her public library. I think we have the first bookmobile service of any county in the state. And of course, growing up next door to the librarian, you had to visit the library regularly. And to think about the joy of reading and the abstraction of reading and the beauty of reading and the creativity of reading and the entrepreneurship of reading and the fact that you can talk to people of all ages and be on great sailing ships and you can be at the Alamo and you've been on the Lewis and Clark expedition and you've wrestled grizzly bears and all of the neat things that are in the books and in the literature and in the imagination and the creativity for our children. Surely all of the parents and grandparents here make sure the children, most of all, use this library. So then I like this other quote that catches my fancy for a moment like this. A book is a friend. A good book is a good friend. It will talk to you when you want it to talk. And it will keep still when you want it to keep still. And there are not many friends who know enough to do that. So come use your public library. Celebrate in the commonness that we have in America, where oftentimes our social fabric and our commitment to each other is breaking down around race and creed and wealth and individuals and corporations, and understand that there's a commonality that we are in each other's living room, we're in each other's lifestyle, and that there is beauty in a commonly held institution like this that enhances the quality of life for all of our citizens. Oh, you're a good people. Again, Phillips, Wisconsin, you did the right thing. Thanks for letting me be here today and to be inspired by your wonderful accomplishment.
Now at this time, a really special friend, someone that I've gotten to know being involved in the library, is going to come and share with us the history. I call him our local historian, Carl Ness. Please welcome him.
I'm afraid I'm going to have to bore you today with giving you numbers and dates and things, but we can't tell the history of what happened in this folks' library without going back and reviewing where we were, where we started from, and where we are today. Every time I go to my bedroom window, I see this magnificent library facility, and I get a lump in my throat and a tear in my eye. My involvement in providing a library service in this community goes back to the days when I was in knee pants and heard my mother, Lydia Mess, talk about the need for more books and space. I spent many hours reviewing the minutes of the library board, the Civic League, and the Readers Review Club to bring you these highlights in the struggle to realize this dream came true. The first entry in the book for the Phillips Public Library was made on March 25th, 1917, and it recalls how a group of people got together in the Phillips High School assembly room, and they decided to form a library. There had been some growing interest in the community up to that time. Somebody had prepared a constitution already, so that they talked about it, they voted on it, and the Library Association was formed, and at that time everybody who wanted to belong to the Library Association paid $1 a year dues. One of the things it says in here, any resident of Phillips or contingent territory may be a member by paying dues. This word resident was changed from the original, which came up, which says citizen. And I think we have to remember that back in 1917, there were people living in Phillips, Wisconsin, who were not citizens. We had many people who were not naturalized citizens. So in order to accommodate those people, they changed it, they made it residents. They elected a board, and on April 16th, that was less than 3 weeks later, 92 members had signed up to belong to the Phillips Library Association. And if they sent in an order for books, the order for the A.C. McClure was for $28.14. I don't know how many books they got for that, but I can tell you that today, if you buy the book about Nancy Reagan, it costs you $24.95 for one piece of dirt. So apology to Mr. Grover. Mr. Grover and I were having some political discussions here earlier. They also bought 40 books from a lady in town by the name of Mrs. Chandler, and they paid 25 cents a piece for them. So $10, $28.14. That was an investment of $38.14. And they had Mr. Friedel make a bookcase for them for $25. And 3 weeks later, the library was in operation. And it was located in the lower level of the Masonic Hall. And that was also the home for the bee office. But they were in operation within 3 weeks. This was a total of about 6 weeks from the time they decided to start a library. They really were going good. They established the hours were from 4 to 6 p.m. on Tuesdays and Thursday afternoons, and from 3 to 8 on Saturdays. This library was run on a volunteer basis. There was no librarian. This was a group of people who were interested in the library, and they came down. And the notation, December 21st of that year, they said, this is a quotation, 15 to 20 young ladies have been instructed on how to care for and give out books to the public. So they kept operating for quite a while there with just people who were volunteering to run the library. The first contribution that was made to the library was $5, and it was given by the Campfire Girls. On March 13th, there was a representative from the State Library Commission that came and talked to the people on the library board, and they found out that many libraries around the state were being financed from municipalities, that you didn't have to sell $1 dues or things like that. And so they decided that this would need to be a good thing to do and to get organized on a more regular basis. They advertised in the paper for a young lady librarian at a salary not to exceed $1 per week. They had a tag day. They raised $46.97, and that gave them the assurance that they were going to be able to hire somebody who could serve on a regular basis in the library. We go down another less than a year later. They had applied to the city for financial assistance, and they asked for $150. And the city very generously gave them $200. And so they were so flush that they went out and they raised the librarian's salary by 25%. She was now going to get $1.25 a week. In 1921, this is another entity which was operating in Phillips at the time called the Civic League. And this was a group of women who took care of Christmas baskets for the needy, people, if there were fires and people got burned out, the Civic League came in and helped them get started again. Made up, probably primarily of ladies. They started holding silver peas in order to raise some money for a new library. This was one of the projects that they took on. And they investigated the possibility of renting a couple buildings in town and presented this to the city hall, and they didn't get very far with it. And in 1922, they came before the city board and they said, we ought to have a new building, period. And according to their records, it says, we waited long enough for funds from other sources. Evidently, they had been going to the Carnegie Foundation or place like that, and they couldn't get in. So back in 1922, here we have people all have to go. In 1922 now, the Civic League was so hot on this project that they purchased a corner lot on the corner of Chestnut and Avon. Incidentally, they bought that from my father. My mother was both in the Civic League and on the library board at that time. And that was going to be a possible site for a new library. And also, on that same date, back in 1922, there's a notation that the Thanksgiving service that was held in the Methodist Church, they donated their entire collection to building a new library in Phillips. It was from the Methodist Church. In 1923, the city council wanted the Civic League to give that corner lot to them for a site for a municipal building. And the Civic League denied that. I'm glad they did. That's where our telephone office is now. And the city board met with the city to discuss some space allotment in a new building. See, the city's talking about building a new city hall, not a new one, because they had been rented quarters before. So they want the city to really give them some space in the city hall. And according to the records at that time in the Civic League said they had also talked with the city, and that the library was going to be allotted 3 rooms in this new city hall that was going to be built. We're all aware of the fact that that didn't happen. The move was completed after the city hall was built to the council rooms, which is upstairs at the city hall. Marie Frazier, who was a librarian here for several years, reported that there was a brief interval in there that the library moved from the basement of the Masonic Hall in the B office, moved to a building called the Kinney Building, which, in talking with Red, I understand this is about the location of the Phillips Cafe or Marvin Carroll's Bar, someplace in that location, but they didn't stay very long. They finally moved up into the city hall, and as you recall, the council rooms upstairs had cupboards around the outside of the room, and that was a library. It was all contained in those. Finally, they put glass doors on, and we got keys for it, and be able to lock the thing up. And also then in 1927, the Civic League sold the corner lot back to my father. They got $950 for it, and he swears he'd sold it to them for $150, but that was one of the sources there of a little more money than the Civic League treasury. In 1937, my mother was on the board at that time, and she suggested a plan, and it seemed that there was a foundation, evidently an old building that was on the corner where the old city hall is, and that it might be a good idea to check that out, to find out about building a building, because the foundation, part of the foundation was left there. And the notation says that the board is unanimous in the belief that there should be a better, more suitable place in which to house the Phillips Library. This is 1937. In 1938, my father was mayor at that time, and he met with the county board, or with the library board, and he announced plans to enlarge the city hall in order to provide space for the library on the first floor. My mother came back to the county board 6 weeks later and said she gave a discouraging report concerning the city hall and the library project. That never materialized. I'm pointing these out to you because I want you to realize how over the years there's been this effort to get another location for the library. In 1942, between January and July, the library collected 206 books to be sent to army camps. In 1943, the council was advised that the library had bills in the amount of $19.30, and they didn't have any funds to pay for it. And the city came through with an appropriation of $250 for the operation of the library. On June 6, 1943, Lillian Niebauer, who is incidentally probably the one living person today who was on the board the earliest, who is still alive. She had been named on the board in 1942. She was authorized to try to organize a library club. And as a result of this, the formation of another important thing that played a major part in the early days of our library here, and that was the Reader's Review Club. The Reader's Review Club was a group of women who paid $2 a year dues. And for that $2, they could pick out a book that they wanted to read for themselves and then donate to the library. So this was a way that the library received new material. They were allowed to keep that book for 30 days, and then they gave it to the library. And there was most of the women in town belonged to that organization, and they would rotate from one house to another. They had programs in reviewing the books or the minutes from those meetings. You find that they put on programs. I think probably Jean Groff's first style show that she ever had in Phillips was put on to raise money for the Reader's Review and the library fund. And they had hobby shows, a lot of things that the Reader's Review Club did to help raise money for the library. In October of 1950, the Civic League disbanded, and they turned over their funds in to the library board with the stipulation that the money was to be used to buy furnishings when permanent quarters on on the first floor could be obtained. At that time, we received $2,417 from the Civic League. In 1956, the board requests the city purchase the Reese building, which you will recognize today as the building where the Rent a Movie is down one or two doors up from the theater. I don't remember what the selling price on that was. It wasn't very expensive, but among other things, they would have had to put in was $296 for a new heater, space heater that would have been needed on it. They didn't want to go for that at all, but that might have been our new library if they had bought that. But I think they felt so bad about this that we had found a place, and that was very reasonable, that they upped our appropriation that year. They gave us $600 more, so we had $1,200 that year for the operation of the library. In 1958, John Bauman, who was commander of the American Legion Post, proposed that the library could rent space in the Legion building. And both the board and the city government turned that one down. We didn't want to be in that building. In 1962, the board recommends to the council that they investigate the availability of space in the Masonic building for library purposes. There were some vacancies that occurred in there. That would have brought us full circle right back to the D Hall, where the D office used to be. I think it was at that time that the D office was built, if I'm not mistaken. I was here, and they moved out. And they should also look into the possibility of obtaining space in a new courthouse which was going to be built. That also fell through. In 1970, the first mention was made of moving the library from upstairs at the City Hall downstairs, because the fire department was vacating those quarters down there. But at that particular time, after the fire department got out of there, there was a fellow lived in town here who I'm sure you all remember by the name of Ray Peterson. And Ray Peterson and I managed to convince a farmer who lived out in Emory, who had a big steam tractor sitting back in his field, that he ought to donate that to the city of Phillips for a kind of a memorial. So we got that tractor, we had the county haul it in, and we hauled it into the space downstairs where the fire department was, and the Green Thumbers worked for a year in restoring that tractor, and that's the one that you see sitting out next to the city hall now. So we had to delay our move downstairs for a year. But finally we did move downstairs. And that was in May 1972. We had an open house. We obtained the furniture from the prison industries. And we blew the whole fund that we had saved up, which had now amounted to $3,100 that we got from the civic fund. And we paid for all the furniture and the shelving. And incidentally, probably the majority of the things that you see here today in this library was the furniture that came from our move downstairs. And in 1972, it represented the period when we were downstairs now in bigger quarters. That there was a lot of growth, and we had organizations like the Slenderellas and the Ladies of the Moose, people like that who gave books, gave money, individuals gave contributions of one kind or another. In 1975, Park Falls Library and our library got together, and we petitioned the county board to form a library planning committee of Price County. We were at a particular time when there was a deduction being made from everybody's income tax that was going for library purposes in the state of Wisconsin. We were not getting any of it. Park Falls was not getting any of it because we were not parts of an organized system. And in the unique position that we were, we had an opportunity to go with either Wausau or Ashland or Eau Claire. So we urged the formation of this committee, and we made the recommendation to the county board that we go with the Eau Claire system. And that is where we are today. Now that opened the door a great deal for us, because much of the source material that we have today or have been getting over the years comes from that Eau Claire system, and we also get the increased funding. And by the fact that we became organized as a county organization, that money came back to the county, and it is now doled out to the various libraries in the county here. In 1981, I resigned from the board. I had been there for 30 years. And I felt at that time that the library had gone about as far as we could ever go. I had a goal when I in City Hall. We had more room, and I thought there was room now for new people to be working in. So I was very happy I felt I had accomplished what I had set out to do. Throughout the 1980s, there were many improvements that were realized. This is the period when we were downstairs, because of this extra source material we were getting and the extra funds. And so the place grew pretty much. There was a place there, I'm sure some of you remember, when there was cabinets on top of cabinets. They had to take some of the furniture out in order to make more rooms for shelves and things. So that, again, this became a problem of space. And so in 1986, whoever was on the library board at that time was smart enough. They broke out these old plans that were going way back years before about how the city hall should be enlarged in order to make room for the library. And they presented that to the city council. And the city council would, I guess, realize the fact that that was the case. They were going to have to do something about space. And about this time in 1987 is when the school, middle school opened, and this complex over here, at one time was all of the school that we had here, everything from kindergarten to high school, but it finally wound up being the middle school. But that complex became available. And so that was something for the city to be looking at, and the possibility of finally doing something for the library. And from this point on, this is we're going into the home stretch here now, and I was not very privy to what was going on all the time there. But I'm going to call on Carol Wendorf, who certainly was one of the people who was a leader on the library board and the activities that went on. And incidentally, the first reference I see to Carol Wendorf's name back here is in 1979, when the library board wrote her letter of commendation for all of the volunteer work that she had been doing. And so, Carol, oh, here you are.
Carl has asked him to take you through what I call the final phase. The final phase began in 1986. The library board was probably not any different than any of the previous library boards in that we wanted more for the library. But there were several key factors which came into the mix which helped us to get where we are today. First thing were two community surveys. One was done in 1986 by library aide Sandy Kazierski, who was taking the basic 850 course. And she did a survey of library patrons, and that survey came back, 98% of the people wanted to see increase in the facility and the services of the library. In September of 1987, in working toward a block grant, the city had a community survey circulated. And at the beginning of 1988, Northwest Planning brought in the results of that survey. And one of the questions on that survey dealt with the library, and again, the community showed overwhelming support for its better facilities and increased services from the library. This was probably the key to the city council that the community really wanted this service. The next key in the mix came to the city council itself. In order to go forward with a project like this, they needed someone who would have the time and put in the effort to be a liaison to the library board in order to get this project off the ground. Jenny LaChance took on that Herculean task. And so the city council gave us the go-ahead to look at our options for getting increased space. The next factor was the LSCA, Library Services and Construction Act, Title II, which was available to libraries as a 30% matching grant. In January of 1987, Eileen Zielinski and our then library board president, Audrey Alberg, went to Wisconsin Rapids to a seminar on library construction and planning, done by
Anders Dahlgren. And the following month, they had requested that Anders come up and talk to us. And he gave us a focus on going about looking at our options, making a plan. We looked at adding on to the current City Hall building. We looked at building new, and we looked at rehabilitating older buildings in the area. And what it came down to was in Short Elliott Hendrickson, the architectural firm that the city had hired to look at the complex you can see behind you. There was one building in the back, was known as the old TMR building, that had the required space that we would need if we were going to upgrade our facilities. And the city gave us the go-ahead to apply for the grant to rehabilitate that building. That was in spring of 1989. So in May, we hired the library consultant firm of Himmel and Wilson to help us put together a professional grant. We're hopes to get this. They were exceptionally easy to work with. They did a very professional job, and they got the facts together and got our application to the deadline of August 1st. And in October of that year, we received provisional grant approval. The week after we received provisional grant approval for remodeling the TMR building, the city council informed us that they would like to use that building for something else. And would it be all right if we went ahead with a new building on the front piece of this property? Well, after gathering ourselves back together, we went to Anders and requested a change from a remodeling project to a new construction for our grant. And after several extensions, Short Elliott Hendrickson had time to come back with a plan for a new building. And we made revisions, and we could get on with the process. Another important part to this mix was that in March of 1980, we formed a Friends of the Library group. Without this group, our fundraising and moving and the dedication would not have happened. They have been a key factor in demonstrating the tremendous community support that this project has. In May of 1980, bid advertising occurred. On June 18th, we received our final grant approval. And on June 19th, bids were awarded to B&K contractors of Marshfield. Under the expert leadership of Terry Cruz, foreman on the job, groundbreaking took place on August 15th, and on December 15th, the keys were turned over to us. At the end of December 1990, the old library closed, and as you know, on February 1st, this wonderful facility opened.
From the very beginning, this library in Phillips has continued to operate, mainly because of citizens who were willing to give of their time and talents. Today we've kind of come full circle from the day, like that I told you about earlier, when there were 15 or 20 young ladies who ran the library, and they did the voluntary work. If any of you come up here tonight now, you'll see, I'm sure, about that many, I can call them young ladies, who are working in here under the guidance of the librarian and the staff here, keeping this library going to be. We've come a long way, baby. Thank you.
one thing I want to point out before we wrap up our day is in the showcase over there, a Phillips native and internationally known glassblower, Gary Beecham, has donated a bowl, and he has donated it for us to raffle off with the proceeds going to the library. So you might want to look at the display, and beginning tomorrow morning, raffle tickets will be able to be on sale here at the library. So I want to point that out. Before we close, I just want to thank one person. She's been mentioned a couple times today, but Jenny LaChance, would you stand? I don't know if everyone knows you, but I know her family has put up a lot. She manages to keep a household with 4 kids and a husband going, and manages to be in our quilt group and help us hand quilt. And she's been the liaison between our friends and the library board and the city. She's a city council member. We just really want to thank Jenny LaChance. Let's give her another round of applause. And today we want to wrap up, but we don't want to forget to mention a thank you to the Boy Scout troop who's providing the refreshments for us. So we're going to close now, and you're welcome to look through the library, and in the community room they'll have refreshments. So thank you all for coming.
you.